Hello, hello, and welcome to zinstake. This is our very first episode, and I welcome you, dear listener. I know this is our very first episode, so because of that, I'm going to explain to you how this show is going to work. So first, we're going to go over the weather in a few different places. If you feel that your town or city was not mentioned in the weather part and you want it to be mentioned, please email us at zinstake@gmail.com. That's zinstake@gmails.com. Anyway, moving forward, we're just going to go ahead and get started with the weather of the day. So, starting with Honolulu, Hawaii, we have highs of 24 degrees Celsius. And going forward, all temperature and weather will be mentioned in Celsius. So, for you wonderful Fahrenheit people, I'm so sorry. Moving on, highs of 24 degrees, lows of 21 degrees. It will be windy, cloudy, with a small amount of sunshine throughout the day. London in the UK, highs of 13 degrees Celsius, lows of 7 degrees Celsius. Also windy and cloudy most of the day, with a small chance of rain. Moving on to Toronto, Ontario, highs of 3 degrees, lows of -3 degrees, and it's sunny in the day, cloudy at night. So what we're going to do here at zinstake is we're going to cover the news that is important to you, what you find is pertinent. If you feel that there are news articles or issues that were not covered, you can wait till the end of the podcast and I will tell you our email once again, and you can email our editor and he will have those different news that affect your wallet. So for the first piece of news, we have CNBC says U.S. and Britain strike Yemeni Houthis in a new wave. This was meant to further disable Iran-backed groups that attack American and international interests in the wake of Israel-Hamas war. Now, a lot of smoke has been mentioned about these Yemeni Houthis. These guys have been fighting, a decade-long war with the Arabs, your Saudi Arabias, your Emirates. These guys had American-bought weapons. They were doing it for 9 years. They starved them out. They sent missiles on missiles. I mean, how many bombs and missiles did Russia drop on Ukraine? Still there. How many bombs and missiles did Saudi Arabia drop on Houthis? Still there. So will these strikes work? Chances aren't great. I mean, if you watch what the Houthis are saying and you hear them and you listen to them, it sounds a lot like they want this. And it's making them a lot more popular in Yemen and in the greater Arab world. I mean, you don't see Saudi Arabia getting involved in this. They want to continue negotiations with these guys. You don't see, any of the Arab countries, Egypt, Sudan, nobody, right? And what do you see? You see people like Iran supporting them. You see their popularity going up. Do I think that these strikes will continue to do anything other than cause more issues? Probably not. Next piece of news, from CNBC, House Speaker Mike Johnson announced a new bill to fund Israel separately from Ukraine. In other words, an Israel-only funding project. The bill would provide $17.6 billion to Israel, adding on to the $14.3 billion aid package that the House passed in the wake of Hamas's October 7th attack. So it looks a lot like, the U.S. and other non-EU countries are starting to focus a lot more on Israel and Gaza as opposed to what's going on in Ukraine. So Ukraine is definitely losing its appeal to most people around the world. I mean, this war has been going on for a long time. You're sending a lot of money over there. And the more of this money that gets sent over to these countries, you have to wonder, do the people that live in these countries, whether that's the EU, whether that's the US, Canada, the UK, Australia, whatever it is, do these countries, the people there, not the governments, right? Would the people there, if you had to choose between, say, $20 or $30 for everybody in the country, right? Especially you have a housing crisis, you have inflation, you have all sorts of different crises. People can barely afford food out there, and they're looking at all these billions of dollars sent to places like Israel, like Ukraine. That can be hard to swallow for your everyday person. So will this funding continue? I'm not sure, but as these elections start coming around the corner, I mean, you have the US election around the corner. Pretty soon, you're going to start having EU elections, Canadian elections, UK elections. Will the politicians that choose to fund these foreign wars, will they continue to get voted in? Zinstake? Probably not. Next piece of news from CBC. High interest rates aren't to blame for housing crisis, Bank of Canada says. Bank Governor Tiff McClain says the government should be focused on increasing housing supply to improve affordability and warns policies that increased demand will worsen it. Well, he's 100% right. Also, the fact that it's harder to borrow money doesn't make houses go up in value. The reason why all our housing is so expensive, one of the many reasons, is, of course, yes, he is right about the demand. So one of the main things is clearly we don't have enough supply for all the demand. You have a lot of immigrants, you have a lot of new people coming in, a lot of young people growing up wanting homes. Problem is, not enough homes. But the main thing I like to think is you have you have a situation where during COVID, you had near zero interest rates. People were getting 1, 2, 3% interest on homes that were $1 million, $500,000, $2 million. Your average person doesn't make enough money to cover these mortgages. And more to the point, your average house makes more money on average, especially in Canada, than you do. So chances are you're not going to be able to afford a house unless the housing prices go down. And if there's all these mortgages out there because of cheap and low interest rates for all those years, chances are you got to keep those interest rates higher for longer. I'm sorry. Now, here's the real question. Everyone's talking about this all the time. Interest rates are going to go down. When are they going to go down? Is it this summer? Is it this March? When is it, right? I like to believe that the governors, the Fed chairs, the people who are in charge of these interest rates, maybe this is just my own positive thinking, maybe this is just my own goodwill, but I do not believe they will continue to have cheap interest rates for people and companies, by the way, to get a bunch of loans to inflate prices anymore. I want to believe that these wonderful people have your interest in mind, and they really will fight inflation, and they really will keep interest rates high. And yeah, some people lose their mortgages. I hate to say it. Some big companies will lose their loans. You're already seeing big box companies and stores closing down shop here and there. It's only a matter of time until you have a situation where there's less money in the economy and prices do slowly go down, or at the very least, they don't go up anymore. And will there be a housing sell-off? Zinstake? Yeah, there will be. Or at least that's the hope. Am I wrong? Maybe. We'll have to see how these things go. Only time will tell. I do find it very difficult to believe that the governors and the chairmen will continue to let their currencies run, especially after the pandemic, especially after all the crises have done. We have new crises on the forefront, right? We have crises like the housing crisis. In the UK, they call it the cost of living crisis. Literally, cost of living crisis. In some articles, you see it being called the survival crisis. Will these people continue to let that go? Probably not. And if they do, chances are you're going to see a lot of people change during the new elections. I'll tell you that much. Next piece of news from Forbes, Proofpoint, Block, PayPal, and iRobot cut hundreds of jobs. So this is just a continuation of all the tech layoffs you've been seeing in the news. Everyone from Meta to Amazon to Microsoft, eBay, you name it, right? So here's my question. You're seeing a lot of tech companies getting a lot of increases in their stock prices, right? You're seeing that they're right on the very tip top of the stock market. Now, my question is this another tech bubble? chances are, yeah, you had a lot of money come in during the pandemic and the different crises. It's only a matter of time until that money starts to leave the system. And when it starts leaving the system, you're already seeing it right now, right? These big tech companies that got all this money, all the share price, are starting to reduce employees over and over again. Is that really the sign of companies that are really doing well, that are expanding, that are the next big thing around the horizon? Probably, chances are no. So I think that as time continues to go forward, you're going to see these companies lose share value. You're going to see these companies continue with their layoffs, and eventually you're going to start seeing more and more bankruptcies, a couple Chapter 11s around the way. Next piece of news, Al Jazeera. In a sign of commitment, EU unlocks aid for Ukraine as it fights off Russia. So as the war has been going on for the last few years here, you've been noticing less and less countries are getting interested, except, of course, the EU governments, right? So the EU governments are right next door. This is their pet project. Project Ukraine is very important to the politicians that are already elected, right? Now, is Project Ukraine important to the people of the EU, though? I don't believe that it is. You are seeing billions of euros flooding into Ukraine. In the beginning, it was hundreds of billion. Now this new package, it's called the Ukraine Facility Package. In total, with loans and grants and everything, you're looking at 50 billion euros in total. How many people are in the EU? Roughly a billion people. That's what, 50 euros per each person in the EU. Now think about this for a second. You're seeing a lot of protest out there, especially because of the cost of living crisis over there and over here, over everywhere. When your government chooses to give somebody else $50 that could have went to you and all your friends and everyone you know, that could have been used to buy eggs from the store, that could have been used to buy bread, that could have been used to buy baby formula for your kids. You think about that and you say, okay, let's go give this to a government that's going to what? Use that money wisely in order to fight off a country that we have nothing to do with, that don't affect us really that much. I mean, that's really tough to swallow. And you're seeing a lot of protests right now, especially it's moving over to protest season in Europe. And you have a lot of European governments that are about to have elections here pretty soon. Will the people that are sending all this money to Ukraine continue to get those votes? I don't believe they will. In related news, from Reuters, French Farmers Union calls for an end of blockades as anger spreads in Europe. So this farmer strike started, I believe, in Germany. Then it spread on to France, Spain, you name it, all sorts of different countries. You're seeing a lot of people upset right now. Now, what are the farmers' complaints across Europe? Include being choked by green rules, taxes, rising costs, and unfair competition from abroad. So you're seeing this more and more. The governments over in the EU, over in the States, over in Canada, the UK, they're more and more focused on things like climate change. I'm not here to tell people, hey, I don't believe in it or anything like that. If you want to save the environment, nothing wrong with that. The only thing is it worth you losing your job? Is it worth you having to pay twice as much for your food? Is it worth the farmers here losing their livelihood? I've met a few farmers, and it's not easy to be a farmer. Some years they make a whack load of money. Some years they don't, right? You can get one bad harvest and your whole business goes kaput. It could be very difficult. A lot of these farmers are getting subsidies from the government that there no longer are. You get a lot of rising costs and new rules. That's not something these guys can handle, especially when, you think about it. Who's at fault for inflation? You can say whoever you want, but at the end of the day, you're going to look at the guy putting all this new money in the system that's keeping all these other companies alive while you're paying more and more money because of all these new loans out there with all this new money. So it could be very difficult for the people of the EU to sit there and say, okay, I'm going to take this line down. You give my tax dollars over to Ukraine. You give my tax dollars over to the green climate agenda, taxes, whatever. Do all that stuff. And don't focus on me. Don't focus on getting me cheaper housing. Don't focus on getting me cheaper food. Don't focus on my supply chains. Don't focus on me as a citizen. Focus on other people. Focus on things outside. Focus on an entire country outside of my country. That's going to be really tough. And you're seeing a lot of elections around the corner. And I'll tell you, if elections were today, you would not see any of the faces out there, except, funnily enough, maybe the green people. So yes, while we say that the green taxes and projects and so forth are detrimental for most citizens, it has made them more popular. So yes, other than your Annalena Baerbock and those wonderful green people, right, Robert Habeck and those people, other than them, all those other politicians that are supporting Ukraine, that are not about the green agenda, they're just showing up for it, those people, their faces will change. And I'll tell you, I don't think you're going to see the Green Party in governments across the EU. They might be a strong opposition, sure, right? Because they are doing what the green voters want them to do, regardless of whether that's right or wrong. However, the rest of the voters don't feel that way, right? The rest of the voters are saying, you governments have let me down. I've done everything right. I've paid my taxes. I voted for you. And here I am paying higher prices. Here you are sending money to Ukraine. That's going to be pretty tough to handle. Moving on, though, let's have a little bit more positive news. We're going to move over to uranium. So this is from oilprice.com. I use these guys almost every day. I read them all the time. Uranium prices soar as world turns to nuclear power. So you've seen it at the last COP28, I believe it is. A lot of countries. So what was it? 22 countries pledged to triple nuclear capacity. So all roads lead to uranium. Uranium is our future. And if some Western governments choose not to do that, then they're just going to pay for higher and higher uranium prices and higher uranium facilities later on. It is a great source of energy. It's more stable, it's more consistent, and you're going to see a lot of people and a lot of governments thinking, hey, this is my new way. I don't care what other people say. I'm going to make this work. According to Mining Magazine, Japan adds uranium to critical minerals list. The same Japan, if you recall, that closed all those uranium power plants a few years ago. Now they're slowly opening them back up, right? So they have the facilities there. They're going to start opening them back up. They're going to get that uranium in there. And the people of Japan and other countries will start to have cheap, clean, affordable energy, hopefully for all. And our last piece of news for all you wonderful copper people out there. Now, I know a lot of people here believe in the commodity super cycle, and I am no different. I too believe in a commodity super cycle. However, I can't tell you how much time that's going to be or when that's going to be. I can only tell you that for right now, you are seeing a lot of shortages in all the right places. So, for example, our last piece of news from the Financial Post: closure of Panama copper mine threatens e-transition. Forced shutdown of $10 billion mine signals to companies invest in rule of law countries only. So you're seeing a situation where there's less and less copper out there, especially mined copper, and you're seeing more and more people with electric cars, new computers, new electric things that inevitably use lots of copper. And especially when you're talking about things like electric cars and electric scooters and all sorts of things that are, climate friendly and so forth, these things use 2 or 3 times as much copper as they used to. Now that's going to be it for tonight. We are going to have to end today's show. I really appreciate you for listening, and we thank you, dear listener, for taking your time to take a little bit of your day to listen to zinstake. The last thing I'm going to let you know is if you have any questions, comments, concerns, want your bit of news or your town or city added to our list, please email us at zinstake@gmail.com. That's zinstake@gmail.com. The link will be in the description. And please leave a like, subscribe, share with a friend. We love you all, and we appreciate your time. Thank you.